We typically picture a bird slipping effortlessly into the air, a tiny songbird catching a breeze without a second thought. But then you see a creature like an ostrich pounding the dirt, hauling its massive frame across the desert in a high-speed sprint. For millions of years, the basic rule of avian flight has been absolute lightness. To beat gravity, a bird needs hollow bones, a tiny frame, and a body weight low enough for feathered wings to generate upward lift. This illustrates the breaking point of that biological law. On one side, aerodynamic lift. On the other, body mass. Once a bird grows to weigh 155 kilograms or develops wings the width of a car, the math breaks down. Standard flight mechanics simply fail. To achieve giant proportions, these animals had to make a dangerous evolutionary bargain. They either had to push their aerodynamics to the absolute limit of what physics allows, or sacrifice the sky entirely. Every giant bird alive today represents a radical adaptation to a specific set of environmental pressures, defining the outer limits of what it means to be a bird. Let's look at the birds that refuse to give up flight. Species like the Dalmatian pelican, the mute swan, and the Cory bustard sit right at the ceiling of aerodynamics. For an animal trying to stay airborne, the absolute maximum weight threshold hovers around 15 to 20 kilograms. Look at the Cory bustard. With its thick neck and solid frame, it looks like a creature built strictly for the ground. Yet, at nearly 20 kilograms, it manages to force itself into the air. Carrying that kind of mass requires a massive intake of fuel. A heavy flyer, like the mute swan, has to consume up to 2 kilograms of aquatic vegetation and small organisms every single day just to maintain the energy needed to fly. And taking off is a grueling physical trial. These heavyweights cannot simply leap from a branch. They need long, flat runways, paddling furiously across the water or sprinting across land, relying on frantic, energy-draining flapping to finally break gravity's hold. Powered flight at 20 kilograms exhausts the limits of biology. To grow any larger and still survive, a bird must find a way to stop flapping. The next evolutionary strategy involves outsourcing the energy cost. Instead of fighting the air with muscle, these birds use the environment to support heavy, elongated wings. The wandering albatross has a wingspan that reaches an astonishing 3.7 meters. But that massive span comes with a rigid trade-off. An albatross usually cannot take off from flat land. It requires a steep hill, a cliff edge, or a strong ocean headwind to throw itself into a glide. In the mountains of South America, the Andean condor takes this efficiency to an extreme. Researchers tracking condors recorded one individual flying 160 kilometers over 5 straight hours. This charts a 16-kilometer flight across the Andes. Over 5 hours, the condor flapped its wings for only 1% of the journey. They do this by locking their wings and seeking thermals, columns of warm air. They operate like biological sailplanes. By letting wind currents and gravity do the heavy lifting, these birds bypass the muscle weight limits of flapping, exploiting the atmosphere to rule the sky. But there is a final tier of avian giants. To reach a truly colossal size and dominate a physical landscape, a giant bird must completely surrender the sky. Enter the rhétites, birds like the ostrich, rhea, and emu. Once they abandoned aerial flight, they no longer needed delicate, hollow structures. Their bones became dense and heavy. Their legs packed on massive, powerful muscle. Their wings didn't disappear, they were repurposed. For an ostrich sprinting at 65 kilometers per hour, the wings act as aerodynamic sails to maintain balance during high-speed turns. Grounding themselves also allowed for heavy defensive upgrades. The Southern Cassowary evolved into a lethal forest fighter, armed with 125mm dagger-like claws capable of delivering fatal kicks to predators. Down in the Antarctic, the emperor penguin took a different route. It traded flight in the air for flight in the deep ocean. To dive 535 meters beneath the ice, this 45-kilogram bird developed solid bones to resist extreme water pressure. It also upgraded its internal hardware with a highly specialized hemoglobin, a protein in the blood uniquely structured to function in severely low oxygen environments, allowing them to hunt underwater for over 18 minutes. By giving up the air, these birds carved out highly specialized niches in some of the most punishing environments on Earth, from the crushing ocean depths to the open desert. The massive physical traits that allow these birds to thrive in such specialized environments also create a narrow margin for survival. Massive bodies run on rigid biological requirements. They demand immense amounts of specific food, rely on exact thermal wind conditions, and endure grueling reproductive cycles. A male emu, for instance, must incubate eggs for 8 weeks while fasting, losing a massive portion of his body weight in the process. When the environment shifts, these margins collapse. A drying wetland immediately starves a heavy pelican, and the slow breeding cycle of the Andean condor leaves it heavily exposed to extinction from human encroachment. They spent millions of years hyper-specializing their bodies for a very specific version of Earth, leaving them with zero flexibility to adapt to a rapidly changing one. These birds represent the absolute edge of avian physiology, pushing the rules of physics until they break. To be one of nature's giants is to live a spectacular yet precarious and fragile existence.